Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Thursday, February 24th. Derek Van Riper, Saris here with you, wrapping up what has become a fortnight about pitching with closers. This is our 2022 closer episode, and by that I mean this is our 2022 reliever episode because closers are increasingly difficult to find. The game continues to change, and we're seeing as much helium as I think I've ever seen on the top end closers in the pool, because having elite skills and a very firm hold on a clear ninth inning role, hard to find. And I think people are increasingly willing to pass up on a very good player early to secure a large share of their saves in the early rounds and kind of say, hey, I'll just figure out the rest later. I'll figure out how to backfill on bats. I think it leads us to an opening conversation, though, about what you do in leagues where you have control over the rules. Like, we're talking a lot this time of year about NFBC style leagues, draft and hold formats where you can't make in-season moves. But that's a very small percentage of leagues that people play in the community at large. So if I give you commissioner tools, I'm not going to make you actually be the commissioner of the league. I'm just going to give you the authority to change the rules of a league. Are you changing the categories that we use to value relievers? And if so, how are you changing them?
I am having a negative visceral reaction to where closers are going in current NFBC drafts. I can't stand it. I don't know if I'm like an old man shouting at clouds, but like seeing closers go in the second round makes my brains itch.
You have more than one?
Yeah, well, yeah. I need to get so dirty early in the day. But I just don't. It doesn't make sense. We were talking off air about what the implication would be if you saying that two of the top 10 pitchers by ADP in NFBC right now are closers. The implication would be that the Hall of Fame is filled with the 20% of the pitchers in the Hall of Fame are closers, because that's how we value closers in fantasy baseball. It's not the case, and I think there's a good reason for that. Also, just in terms of year to year quality and who keeps their roles, how role dependent is your value? Like, how much value does a typical hitter lose if they go from their second spot in the batting role to the fifth? They still retain a good portion of their value. When the closer all of a sudden is throwing in the seventh inning instead of the ninth inning, he's got zero value. Zero. He goes to zero in most leagues, unless he's like Chad Green or something. But
right. And that group of players is pretty small, too. The guys that you, in non-holds leagues or non-saves plus holds league, the relievers that you want to have on your roster and in your lineup who are not getting saves, it's a handful every year.
And I like that people have identified, especially in deeper leagues, that there are relievers that are good enough to roster them without saves. So Chad Green style. However, the list is not, like you're saying, the list is really small because of the inherent unstickiness of reliever production year to year. So you might think, this pitcher had a really great season, and even if he's not the closer next year, he's going to be great next year. And I think if you said that about 10 pitchers, maybe 3 or 4 would be great again the next year, and then you spent a spot without any chance of saves. So, we'll talk about this today, but I think the best thing to do, like end game style, is to pick good pitchers behind less good pitchers. I guess it's called skills, not roles.
Yep.
And do that. But how do you foment that on a when it comes to like a league? Like, how do you emphasize skills, not roles with relievers in a fantasy league? Like, how do you do that as a commissioner?
Yeah, I think having some kind of combination of saves and holds is probably the best way to go. I don't like holds as a standalone category, but I think if you add them to the saves count, and if you could do, 1/2 of your holds plus your saves, or multiply saves by 2 and add all your holds, however you want to do it to make the count.
I actually I like 1 and 1.
You like 1 and 1?
Well, because holds are actually a little bit. If you think the teams disperse their saves sort of erratically now and across the board, holds are even more like that. And it's easier for a manager to move a guy in and out of the holds role without having to talk to the media about it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to answer questions about why this pitcher is throwing the 7th instead of the 8th as much as you have to as soon as, the closer is, not doing so well. And then all the media is like, well, is he in danger of losing his job? And then they give him the dreaded vote of confidence. And then 2 days later, there's a new closer. That's a whole rigmarole. So what happens is that the guy getting saves gets saves a little bit more often than the guy getting holds. There's more guys getting holds and splitting the holds, and that role is more fluid. So there is still value in saves and holds leagues to getting closers. There is still some value because they're more likely to get them. However, what it does is reduce the value of closers with respect to relievers in general and allow you to do something where you have like one really good closer or one fine closer and 2 or 3 really good setup men. And then if you look at those drafts, relievers, I think, are valued in the way that the league values relievers and that the Hall of Fame and that we sort of think of relievers generally. So.
Yeah.
Sorry to any relievers that are listening.
Yeah. Sorry, relievers.
We love you. It's a tough life.
It's a really tough life. I mean, I think the longer term answer is probably developing a better stat to measure the effectiveness of shorter appearances, non-starter appearances, we could call them, because I think we've also got these guys now in the opener role, and I think there's sometimes good pitchers who are facing the top of the order to begin the game, and that matters. So if you had some kind of stat that basically rewarded a scoreless inning, a full inning or more at any point during the game in which you're not in a blowout situation, maybe, or maybe the blowout doesn't even matter. A scoreless inning is a scoreless inning. So if you have good skills and you're just doing your job, then that'll shine through. Maybe something as simple as that is actually a better solution than holds, which are an unofficial statistic and have 2 slightly different definitions. At least they did at the last time I saw the stat providers and how those worked. So that leads to its own little series of headaches.
And not every box score shows holds. So
yeah, well, that's
annoying.
We can tweak that, I think.
But also innings. Does that capture some of this? Just straight innings as a category?
I think so.
To that.
And I think the other structural change you could make, if we did a better job within the player pool of tagging players as relievers or starters. I know the SPARP leagues and the SPARP role, like you have these guys that get caught in the middle and they become super valuable. If we had some better system for that and we required teams to have deeper groups of active pitchers and that included a longer list of actual relievers, that would help as well.
And then the last thing I can think of is WPA, win probability added. It's sort of a story stat that says, what was the team's win probability when you entered the game, and what was it when you left, and you get credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has some leverage built into it, so there could be something to that. I don't know. Let me just do a real quick. Eno's doing the computer in front of us thing. But what I'm just going to do is qualified relievers last year. This is all relievers by win probability added. And let's see here. Number 1 is Josh Hader. Okay.
He was exclusively a 9th inning guy last year. He did not do the thing where he came in before the 9th inning and got 4 or 5 or 6 outs. They used him as much as as a traditional closer as any team used anyone last year.
Let me just throw it. I'll just do Romano 2nd, Iglesias 3rd. Okay, so I'm not going to list everybody, but I do want to list some names that were not closers that are in the top 10 or top 15, right? So these are the types of pitchers that we would start to value higher. Ian Kennedy, Kendall Graveman, Jonathan Loizaga. So that makes me happy, right? Because I think Loizaga is a good reliever, and I think he's a good pitcher. And so it's nice to see him get some credit. Number 13 was Josh Stowmont. Number 14 was Blake Treinen in a year that he wasn't the closer. Number 15 is Devin Williams. And number 16 was Andrew Chafin. So WPA does an interesting job, I think, of just and Whitlock's in the top 30, and yeah, I think that's WPA is interesting. And then the last, I guess the very last thing, Fangraphs has this. I don't know. I've never seen a league use this, but shutdowns and meltdowns.
Yeah.
Those are just like clean innings versus bad innings. And if I like sort by shutdowns, number 1 is Tyler Rogers. Number 2 is Will Smith, which is a little bit problematic to me because I don't think he's the most amazing reliever, but and he's not very good by WPA. So that's an interesting one. But at least he kept the things clean, and that's what you want. Adam Ottavino and Chad Green are 9 and 10. So there's some ideas. I think you'd have to put a shout out to if you want to shut down Meltdown, you have to ask someone to do some heavy lifting for you.
I just think
do the actual
conceptually,
box score work.
yeah, but conceptually, that's closer to what we want. I know that win probability added, it's probably too much of a black box to use it as a fantasy category, but conceptually, that's the group of relievers that we're hoping to make more valuable, because you shouldn't be seeking out pitchers that are just okay pitchers with great job security. That's not a great game to play in the long run. I think we're seeing the downside of that.
We don't really want tons of Joe Borowski's rostered.
No, I'm sorry, Joe Borowski, if he's listening to the podcast. Look, I don't think any
if he has, he's super mad at me
relievers
because he's my whipping post.
Is he the name you always come up with?
Yes, he's the name I always come up with for mediocre guy that just
he could still just throw gas right by you, you know.
Oh my God. So I just saw Eric Gagne at 46 throwing 86 without a warm-up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There you go.
I can't hit that.
So let's get into the actual closer pool for this season. Tier 1, as we kind of hinted at a little earlier, going inside the top 30 overall in recent NFBC drafts. Liam Hendriks and Josh Hader. From a skills perspective and from a job security perspective, I have no issues with these guys. Obviously, they're at the top of the list for a reason. I have
one issue I'd like to bring up.
Oh, you have an issue. Please, sir.
Liam Hendriks was DFA'd like 3 years ago.
That's baseball, Susan.
I just wanted to point that out.
No, that's the.
I'm not saying anything bad about him. I mean, it all looks good now, but he was DFA'd. He was a really bad starter, and that, of course, a lot of relievers were bad starters, but he was a reliever when he got DFA'd. So I don't know.
That's the fair point, actually. I'm
just saying, yeah, I know. Yeah, it is, because he's throwing harder than he did when he was DFA'd, and that's the big deal. But same time, that's the razor's edge you live on as a reliever.
Maybe DFAing him was actually just a clear mistake, though. You just look. I mean, I think it pretty obviously was now. Like the previous track record to his time in Oakland, he had a good season back in Toronto back in 2015.
Yeah, he was a better reliever. Yeah,
he was pretty good at the beginning of his time.
But he didn't throw as hard as he's throwing now until he came back from the DFA.
Yeah, and I think what would give me a lot of confidence is if you look at how often he'd get hit in the zone back before the velo jump versus how often he gets hit in the zone now. There's a pretty clear difference, even though that number did tick up a little bit in 2021 compared to his 19 and 20 zone contact rates.
That's the league now, is get the awesome stuff and throw it down the middle.
Yeah, so I would say we've seen enough now to where I don't think Liam Hendriks turns back into some sort of DFA pumpkin. I think the question with Liam Hendriks would be, the White Sox are a team with World Series aspirations. Right now, they have a super bullpen. They have other guys they could put in that spot. He's got the big contract. He's got the success in the role. Is it kind of like a Kenley Jansen situation where because of what he's done already, he's got plenty of wiggle room if things aren't going well? Or do they say, we got these other guys that can get the job done, so we're going to go to Graveman, or we're going to go to Crochet, or we're going to go to Bummer? Like they have plenty of other guys, and they still have Craig Kimbrel because they haven't traded him yet, right? So they have a loaded bullpen right now. I guess it's the only other thing kind of looming in the background, but this really isn't my case against Liam Hendriks. It's more of just an open question as to how much they would
Is
let
there
him
more risk
struggle.
there than his ADP suggests, right?
Just as by means of being in a super bullpen. And I don't think Josh Hader necessarily escapes that either, right? You said Devin Williams was top 15
Jake
in win
Cousins,
probability added.
#1 reliever by Stuff Plus.
Right. And they keep unearthing quality arms for that bullpen from
I
unexpected
think the
places.
only risk with Hader is a trade, and if he does get traded, he's probably still the closer reland. So
It'd be pretty strange to trade for him and to not give him at least a large share of the saves.
I asked our beat writer. This is this is my use of Slack. Is I pester our awesome beat writers at The Athletic about stuff from my drafts. So like I did bug James Fegan about like why Kimbrel hadn't been traded yet. And he said that the sense is he'll still be traded, that it just may come down to the end of the offseason. So
James is
it's
such a nice
jockeying to
guy
get.
too. You're just getting at him in the Slack DMs, and he's just trying to be a nice guy and live his life over there. And
It's okay. I return serve by answering questions about stats. It's that's fine.
Well, all right, you got a fair information exchange happening there. So
Yeah.
the bigger question with Hendriks and Hader is if this continues to be the price throughout draft season, there's no
I
reason
can't
to
do
believe
it.
this is going to change.
Second and third round. Oh god.
You're not willing to do this. I mean,
I'm
because
getting my ace and my second best hitter then.
right, you're choosing Hader and Hendricks over Shane Bieber or Julio Urias or Lucas Giolito or Aaron Nola. Those just are the starting pitchers that go in that range. Obviously, if we start talking about hitters around that part of the board, you're looking at Yordan Alvarez, you're looking at Whit Merrifield, Tim Anderson, Cedric Mullins. If you're an early catcher person, Sal Perez goes there. Aaron Judge goes in that range. So those are the types of players you're passing on if you're going to the
Here's
very
the
top of the
only
board.
way I would end up with Hendricks and Hader. I'm not even sure this is possible by ADP. Is if I went hitter in the first round and Urias and Alcantara were gone. I would actually maybe take Hendricks and Hader over the Giolito Nola crowd.
It could happen if you had an early draft slot in the order, right? 1 through 3. Maybe it's a 12 teamer, probably not a 15 teamer.
I was thinking back end, where I'm the back end of the third round. So I can't get Hendricks or Hader then.
They're not going to fall that far. Even in a 12, I don't think you're going to have both
So
sitting
early,
there.
but early third?
It'd be the 2-3 turn from an early position. I think you'd be looking at them as like pick 24 and 25 in a 12 teamer. You could
All
go.
right, so then I would go something like Soto, Hendricks, Merrifield or something.
Right, do something else. So you would consider one there because you're worried from that position of the third round playing out, the closer run starting, the fourth round coming all the way back, and maybe the second tier starting to disappear because there is this massive amount of FOMO.
Because there's so much. Yeah, there's so much. The closers are going so high. Like not even the first two. Like let's go to the next tier. Like show them. Sometimes I miss out on them by waiting that round.
Yeah, the next group starts to come off the board around pick 40 right now. Raisel Iglesias is in this group.
Third round pick.
Firm third rounder at a 15 teamer
Second
and
tier closer.
like your early to mid fourth round if you're in a 12 teamer. So Raisel Iglesias, Emmanuel Clase, Edwin Díaz, and Ryan Presley, I would say, are all kind of clustered together. You could stretch this tier down even further, but if you think about it more in terms of blocks of rounds, that's the next group that you'd be looking at kind of in that 4 or 5 range.
These are safe role guys with really good stuff. Not too obvious who is pushing them for their role. I mean, I like Ryan Stanek, but I like Ryan Presley a lot better. Ryan Presley had like a top 3 or 4 stuff plus among relievers. I know he doesn't throw super hard, but he has a really great breaking ball. He also didn't lose much in the stuff enforcement, so he seems fine. Clase 100-mile-an-hour cutter. What more can you say? And Raisel Iglesias, just a really good pitcher. Like he's a multiple pitch guy. He's not just a 2-pitch guy. That I think that allows him a little bit of safety if he loses a half tick or a tick. And also that bullpen, I don't think. Who's pushing him there? Nobody. I mean, Mike Myers has a below average stuff plus.
You like Aaron Loop, dude.
Aaron Loop I love, but he's a lefty and he's kind of a side armor. We've got Tyler Rogers and that's it.
I've been kind of in this spot where I keep getting Ryan Presley in my early drafts because
Mm-hmm.
position-wise, I have not been in the spot to feel good about the Hader or Hendriks options most of the time. So that's just been off the table in the snake draft so far. And as this group runs off, I don't have any concerns about Iglesias. I think you're right. As a 3-pitch closer, plenty of stability there. You could lose a little velo. I think he can find a way around it. Clase is really young. I don't think the velo is going to drop enough for that to be a problem. And it's not a straight 100. It's gross. It's a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Karinchak's collapse last year also gives him a lot more buffer if he runs into a stretch where he's not pitching well. With Presley, we've got multiple years now in the role, skills that are maybe a notch below the likes of Hendriks and Hader, but if you're grading job stability A through F, he's an A for job security. And I think Edwin Díaz, the last guy that I always think about in this group, he kind of falls more into the next tier. Like this is a tier 2A for me. 2A and 2B are the way I look at it. I like these 4 guys definitely better than the next handful. Like I prefer all of them. But Edwin Díaz, it's like for the skills he has, his up and down nature in that role is more it's more volatile than it should be. A guy with that stuff, with those results, shouldn't be someone we're worried about.
Super bad command. And then here's a list. I've avoided doing this, and I wouldn't do it in print. I don't really want to tweet. I'm not trying to shame anybody. I think the sticky stuff enforcement was a really complicated thing. Pitchers were all using it, and then the enforcement was done in the middle of the season. I didn't like that. I'm not trying to put these guys under the microscope as I don't even say the word, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to, this is not a shaming episode, but what I do think is that relievers, stuff plus and pitching plus are better than projections for relievers. So this is really meaningful. We're talking about small sample guys. And so I have to give this list because I think it's important, and it's important for people to know this. These are the biggest stuff plus losers after the pitching enforcement was done. After the stuff enforcement was done. And I'm only gonna list the guys who lost more than 11 stuff plus, right? So it's huge. Like, I think if you lose 4 or 5, there's some guys on the list that lost 4 or 5 that I'm not even sure used anything, because you're talking about like Marcus Stroman lost 5 in the second half last year. I mean, he's like a sinker baller. I don't think actually that he like, in a lot of ways he wouldn't benefit from it. Casey Mize is a splitter guy. He lost 5 in the second half. I don't know. I kind of doubt a lot of those guys. But 11 to 12 is like just really eye-opening. And this list is super important for people that are going to be trying to find undervalued relievers this year. Number 1 in the biggest stuff plus loss, James Karinchak went from 122 stuff plus to 97.
Relievers with a 97 stuff plus number usually don't sniff late inning roles, right? I mean,
there
that's
is
not
not
even
a
close.
single closer this year that had a 97 plus stuff plus last year. So I just feel like that's super important. I see people taking Richard Rodriguez. Richard Rodriguez, number 2, he went from 114 to 99. Here's the name that pains me to say. The next 2 names are really painful for me to say. Kenley Jansen went from 116 down all the way to 98.6. That may have something to do why he's still out there. I think it has something to do why the Dodgers didn't re-sign him, other than the fact that Blake Treinen still number 1 or number 2 in stuff plus among relievers. So that's something to think about when you're drafting him. I like Matt Barnes as a reliever. He went from 115 to 101 stuff plus. That's a bit rough. Jake McGee, all fastballs, and we found that the sticky stuff enforcement would affect fastballs more than anything, because of that you need that ride. Jake McGee went from 101 stuff plus to 87. That's rough. Craig Kimbrel, right after him, 126 down to 113. Still pretty good at the end, right? Yeah, still pretty good.
Yeah.
Edwin
Still usable.
Díaz, 118 to 106. And he has pretty poor command. So going down to 106, I think, might affect him maybe more than some others. Also, of course, sticky stuff has something to do with command. That's what pitchers say they use it for. And then the next one is Sam Howard. I'll be honest, I don't really know who that is. But anyway, that's your list. And there's some really important names on there. I think I have a share of Craig Kimbrel, and he was one where even post stuff plus he had a 104 post enforcement, 113 plus enforcement, still pretty good. I think I can deal with him. It's not surprising to see Kimbrel on this list though, right? Like we saw the brown spot on his hat forever. I think this might be enough for me not to draft Edwin Díaz and Kenley Jansen though. I mean, this really affects how I will work, I think, in the reliever pool going forward.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. I think the other part of the Diaz equation too is that that's an improving group of relievers behind him. So their past frustrations with him, even though it usually turns
he's
out
lost it
okay,
before, right?
he's lost it before and he's gotten it back. I mean, 32 saves last year, 26 saves back in 2019. That was with a 5.59 ERA in 2019 for Edwin Díaz. It's definitely not as firm of a hold on the role as you'd like it to be for where he goes, despite interesting skills. And I think what you're referring to here with the stuff being a problem once that crackdown occurred, that's another reason to be wary of him as a very high priced option. I think that's the key for me here is I don't want to make a mistake. If I'm paying a premium for a reliever, I do not want to be the person that gets the wrong guy or wrong guys out of this range, because you're going to get roasted. Like, aside from, like, you gave up value from a pure dollar standpoint just by choosing closers in this range compared to the hitters and starting pitchers available.
Oh yeah, your auction calculator is not going to spit out a third or fourth round value for these closers.
So when you do that, there's more pressure to be right. So yeah, I could get on board with your.
I guess the only thing I want to
Diaz.
say about Presley that's negative is he had knee injuries. You know, he's had those. He's had surgery. It could come back to bite him, but that's why there's a little bit cheaper. I think I'm okay with Presley. At least has him in arm stuff, and I think you can come back as long as you don't tear your ACL or something. I think you can come back from knee surgery a little bit faster than devastating arm injury. So
the next cluster kind of runs off in the next couple of rounds, like the kind of round 6, round 7 range. Earlier, if we're talking about a 15-team league, but that group includes Aroldis Chapman, Jordan Romano, Will Smith, Kenley Jansen, and Giovanny Gallegos. You can already see things start to break down in this group. We're beginning, I think, to see significant skills concerns with Chapman. There have been underlying problems with his command, I think, from the first time you've ever presented some command numbers back at First Pitch Arizona like 4 years ago. And we saw a really high walk rate from Chapman last year, 15.6%. That is a problem. He had
a new pitch.
Issue.
We saw a new pitch, which is interesting. It's good, but it's also like, oh, Chapman, senses it.
I think there's kind of an Edwin Díaz feel to Chapman where he goes for me too, where I don't know. I don't know if he's as stable as he was in the past. So I'm not as excited about the skills and the job security as I would have been previously with him. So I haven't really gone that direction. Romano, I know he's someone that you liked based on the model going into last season. It took a little while for the opportunity to end up becoming his, but I'm curious if you have confidence in the Jays sticking with one guy and with Romano being that guy.
Yeah. Let me see here. I have the Fangraphs roster resource depth charts up, and Jordan Romano is bested only by Liam Hendriks, Ryan Presley, and Blake Treinen, and Josh Hader at the top of any bullpen depth chart by Stuff Plus. So that's a good group of people. I'm betting on Romano. I have a fair amount, I have a good amount of shares of Romano. I love Romano in this tier. I think Romano and Chapman, I want to stay away from the back end of this tier. I mentioned that Kenley Jansen is showed up on that last list. Will Smith is one of 4 closers that have below average stuff, and the other 3 are like last tier. So like Will Smith is absolutely not who I'm taking. And then I also want to point out that Will Smith is surrounded by pitchers that are better than him. I just don't think that's a good place to put a bet. By Stuff Plus, Tyler Matzek, 10 points better than him. There was a good piece by Jordan. Jordan in Finland is his Twitter handle. I had his actual name. It's just rude.
I need to see Eno's notes at some point. I need to we need to get an over the shoulder camera just to see.
Well, he did a really cool piece where he took Stuff Plus and put it into projections, which is something that I had planned to do. Jordan Rosenblum, and he did it on Rotoballer. So if you want to see that, he did some projections, so where he changed the K- BB using Stuff and Location Plus. Any case, why was I talking about him?
You're talking about Will Smith.
Oh, he said that. What did he say in his piece? I think that 4 points of Stuff Plus was 2 points of strikeout rate or something. You'll have to look for yourself, but there's like a really good correlation between strikeout rate and Stuff Plus. And so to have a 10-point difference, Tyler Matzek is going to strike out way more batters than Will Smith this year. Luke Jackson has a 15-point difference. AJ Minter has a 13-point difference. Those three pitchers are all better than Will Smith. And they have 3 lefties, so I don't think there's any risk of saying, oh, well, AJ Minter's a lefty, so he won't close. Then you also saw AJ Minter do awesome things in the playoffs.
Yeah, so, he seems like he's back. He had that car accident. I think it was leading into, was it 19 or 20? He had that car accident that messed up his shoulder, and he looked like he was peak AJ Minter again.
Thank you for that. I was looking for a reason behind that. I found shoulder inflammation, but I didn't find the car accident. I'll check that out. But yeah, I think AJ Minter's all the way back. Tyler Matzek, if he has a good command year, could easily take that role. So I'm not betting on. I have 0 shares of Will Smith, and I will continue to have 0 shares of Will Smith.
Yeah, Smith has a multi-year home run issue that is seemingly not going away, and his walk rate was at a 4-year high in 2021. There's a pitch
all it takes is 4 or 5 homers in 2 weeks, and you can lose the role.
Yeah, and again, I think this is just a bad situation because of the quality of alternatives Atlanta has at their disposal, as you outlined. That's a huge problem for someone like Will Smith at this point. Gallegos is the skills play of this group that I've always liked, and we have a new manager, Ali Marmol, taking over from Mike Schilt. So, whatever changes come from that, and whether or not the front office wants one guy to be the dedicated closer, I think that's a fair question, because for years I've looked at Gallegos and said, this guy should be the closer. And year after year, he wasn't their closer. 14 saves in 2021. Once he got the role, still had great ratios. He's had 3 straight seasons now, including the shortened season, with a whip below 0.9. It's fantastic. He's run low 3s ERAs for the last couple of seasons, 360 back in the shortened season, but plenty of strikeouts, a good walk rate. What are the issues with Gallegos other than job security, if any?
Yeah, I think it's just that it's a little bit like the Will Smith situation where there are really good pitchers around him. However, by Stuff Plus, none of them are as good as him. Jordan Hicks is the closest at 111. He's at 112 Stuff Plus. So I've actually used Jordan Hicks. I just finished a draft where I used Jordan Hicks as a late handcuff to Gallegos. Alex Reyes is so wild, and the Stuff Plus is not even that amazing at 102. Plus, they're always talking about making him a starter. Genesis Cabrera is a good pitcher. Ryan Helsley is a good pitcher. TJ McFarland, good pitcher, but none of them have a 110 better Stuff Plus. So I think maybe Gallegos is a little bit safer than people think. I think people are looking too hard at Alex Reyes, but that's really wild. It's wildness to the point where, and injury, right? It's wildness plus injury risk in any given year. Reyes never really seems like less than the sum of his parts for some reason.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it's filthy when he's got it all working. But the second part of tier 2 is a group that I'm not overly enthused about. I like Jordan Romano, I think, the most of the group. if you gave me any sort of firm indicator that Gallegos is the closer, like to begin the season, it's clearly his job, then I probably would put him second. I think with Jansen, we have to see where he signs to know for sure. It just seems weird to me that a
Wow,
team would sign Kenley Jansen.
you would go Romano, Gallegos, Chapman. That's how far down you are on Chapman.
I don't know if I think what it is I'm just passing where Chapman goes, and then he's just not going to be there later, right? Like it's straight up dollar for dollar in an auction situation. Sure, I could see going the extra buck on Chapman because of all three of those guys, he seems the least likely to be replaced,
I
even with
don't
his
think. Yeah,
flaws.
I think if he loses the role, it's mostly like injury or something. He's gotten close to losing the role, but he's never lost it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would go Chapman, Romano, Gallegos, and pass on the other two.
But I think what happens is there's this whiff of desperation in the air when you get to this range. Because if you didn't get one of Hendriks or Hader, and you didn't get into that 2A group with
I
Iglesias or
was
Presley
desperate
or
when I
Díaz
took
or Clase,
Gallegos. I was
yeah,
desperate when I took Gallegos. I was like, there's nothing after this. I'm really Gallegos there's a cliff after it. I think I'm eager to see the next tier because I was like, and took Gallegos.
getting one out of the first three blocks that we talked about seems to be a priority for a lot of people. You don't have to play it that way. You can take your shots later. Tier 3 is so large that it like adds an extra line
But
on the
come on,
screen.
your stomach drops. You're like, these are still in the top. I mean, we're talking about top 20 closers here. Like, how many closers have we counted? 8?
We have got through 11 so far, and
All
now
right.
the next band from an ADP standpoint is almost 80
It
to
is
90 picks.
such a minefield, dude.
I could have probably chopped this into two groups. I'm gonna chop this into two groups for my own sanity. I think we're gonna say 3A and we're gonna cut it off. Check this out. You're gonna like this group a lot better than the giant monstrosity that was just on the screen. How about that? Can we live with that? Tier 3A,
Yeah.
Mark Melancon, Camilo Doval, Craig Kimbrel, Corey Knebel. 'Cause I think I see a little a mini drop. What do you call that out here? It's not a peak, not a mountain. Little plateau,
Foothill.
a foothill. Yes, we're talking about a foothill. Very good. There's watch out for cyclists. They're all over in the foothills. Tier 3A, Mark Melancon, Camilo Doval, Craig Kimbrel, Corey Knebel. It's weird. Like I don't want to talk myself into drafting a guy whose skills I'm not in love with. The interesting thing about Mark Melancon, though, if I look at the surface numbers, I'm not excited in terms of strikeout rate. I just don't think he fits as the late inning guy that you want him to be. Why would Arizona sign him if they weren't going to use him as the closer? And how much can we trust underlying numbers like the Stuff Plus model in this case to say it doesn't matter that he doesn't strike a lot of guys out? He's pretty difficult for guys to square up, and that seems to be a legitimate skill that's going to keep him clinging on to that job.
Yeah, I think cutters are really hard to evaluate. I think it was when we put Steam Shift Awake in, but there's some point one of the updates we made to Stuff Plus last year really helped Corbin Burns and his cutter. And if I think about the closers I've missed on, like Alex Colomé and Mark Melancon in the past, a fair amount of them have been cutter pitchers, that don't have the most amazing velocity, but do have a cutter and don't have amazing strikeout rates. I mean, Colomé has been doing it. He had what did you say? He had 17 saves last year?
Yeah, he led the Twins in saves last year. They also
So
gave
weird.
Taylor Rogers a handful. He had like 9, which is about 10 less than I expected. If you told me, hey, how many saves did Taylor Rogers had, I would have guessed about 20. And yeah, no, he had less than 10.
It is true that better teams give more save chances. It's true that better bullpens lead to more save chances. This is not a very good bullpen. If you look at it, him and Noe Ramirez are really the only ones with standout stuff. JB Wendelken is pretty close to average. Caleb Smith is not, and Tyler Widener is not. So you'd be really hoping that Wendelken and Noe Ramirez can hand the ball over to him. They're probably not good enough to push him for the job. So he might be Joe Borowski-esque, or at least oatmeal for the position, where there's just not that much pushing him. And let's say he doesn't get a ton of save chances, like a Chapman or a Romano or somebody on a better team with a good bullpen around him. I still think he'll get like 20 to 25 save chances. So let's give him 25 save chances, 23 saves. 8K9, like whatever. It's not great, but I have one share of Melancon as a second closer. And honestly, compared to the rest of these guys, I think his role is it's a role play. You just think that he's got a safe role. Camilo Doval, I love his stuff. The Giants seem to be doing the Rays approach to the bullpen where they've really, really mixed around the saves. Tyler Rogers actually has the best stuff plus on that thing, and they've used him as a closer despite his funky delivery. So I could see Doval throwing the 7th, keeping him cheaper in arbitration and blah, 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 and striking out a lot of guys in the 7th with the high heat stuff. And Tyler Rogers comes in and funks out the 9th, So like, I like Doval, but I don't know that he's the closer. Kimbrel, you're waiting for the trade. There could be some weird thing where they're like, hey, we're just going to keep him, have a super bullpen, like, because nobody's offering us anything. That's what is it? It's like a 10% possibility. It's still a possibility. And then Corey Knebel, Kimbrel, one of the best destinations for Kimbrel is Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's not what I'm excited to see. I mean, the way it stands right now, Corey Knebel basically took the spot of Hector Neris in the Philadelphia bullpen. Neris is now the old Kendall Graveman in Houston. Like, he's the next guy up if something does happen to Presley. And I'd be pretty excited about Neris outside of Philadelphia because he's had a home run issue. And I think going to Houston might help soften that a little bit. Knebel, from a skill standpoint, might be the guy that I like the most of all these players. I do think the Philly possibility for Kimbrel is real. There's other places he could go, so I'm not necessarily avoiding Knebel because of this high probability of that particular trade. I think you're right to point out the possibility that the White Sox just hold him for a little while and see how things go. I think the other problem with Doval, aside from the Giants maybe being very willing to mix and match, even if he's part of the closer picture, maybe he's the guy that gets 10 or 12 and someone else, Rogers, whoever, gets 20 plus. Like, that could easily be the script again. The walk rate was pretty bad for Doval everywhere prior to his big league arrival last year. So I'm curious to see if that's a skill that he's legitimately locked in. Is he an 8% walk rate guy as a true talent for his control? Or could we look at the sample that's the same size at AAA from last season and go, 16.7% walk rate, that's a problem? Could we go back to high A in 2019 and say, hey, 13.9% walk rate, that might actually be a problem? It's more of a question than an answer, but I think where he's going, there's more certainty about Camilo Doval's role priced in than there probably should be at this point.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm always a little surprised when he goes. To me, he's like an end game, like, oh, this could be a good one, but it's not like he is a good one, like.
It seems like he's even pushed 30 to 40 picks at least ahead of some of guys that the next group. I mean, like,
think about the track record of Kimbrel next to Doval. It's just weird to.
Yeah. The 3B group, which was previously part of this group until it broke off and it became its own thing. Scott Barlow is in here. Blake Treinen, David Bednar, Taylor Rogers is here. Tyler Rogers goes even later. Gregory, Soto, and Lucas Sims. So, interesting group of names. I think the Royals are a team that I have a terrible read on as far as whether or not they even want one guy to be their closer. I guess we can start with that part of the question. Are the Royals a committee by design? Are they a committee by lack of a clear, obvious solution? Or is Barlow emerging to finally be that guy? Because some of the teams of Royals past had very clearly defined roles in the bullpen, but that was the Ned Yost Royals of 4 to 5 years ago.
I always thought it would be Stomont. And he used to have the best stuff numbers in that bullpen, but he also has pretty poor command. And he's had some bad injury issues, if I remember correctly. And so I think that they were kind of maybe waiting for Stomont to take it, and he didn't. Scott Barlow currently has the best stuff plus in that bullpen other than Dylan Coleman.
Coleman throws hard.
He's listed as the 5th guy. And that's interesting because Coleman, one of the first things that I ever saw any sort of correlation between closing role and any sort of statistics, it was strikeout rate and fastball velo. And Coleman is on a list of pitchers that throw harder than the closers in front of them. Let me see where that list is. I've got some interesting names on there. Coleman is on there. I guess I'll bring up the rest later. Wendelken throws harder than we already talked about him, but than Melancon. But and then some other names of bullpens we haven't gotten to yet. But I don't know. I think it's Barlow. I'm just not that interested in Barlow. A 105 stuff plus is not actually that good among closers. And I see a little bit of a chance for maybe Coleman to take it, and then also just how they've moved it around before. So I haven't ended up with Scott Barlow anymore. I've had some late Joe Barlow. Are they brothers?
I don't know if they're related. It doesn't seem like a common name, so I'm inclined to say that yes, they are relievers with the same last name that is not a common last name. Therefore, they're probably related. I will check Baseball Reference as we get to Joe Barlow in a bit. Blake Treinen creeping up the board. This entire group keeps moving up as people get their guys. I think the Treinen ADP in February is around pick 160. I think if you look back to the earlier part of draft season, he was more of an outside the top 200 guy. Even at pick 160, I really like this because if they don't bring back Kenley Jansen, I think there's a pretty good chance they won't. Treinen's probably their closer. I think they could be a team that goes the route of ultra committee, and then we've got that problem to deal with. But if they have a committee, Treinen's a part of it. And if they have a committee that's not, split up over 3 or 4 different guys, I think there's a very good chance you're still looking at 20 or 25 saves. And the bar in this range is set around that level. At this point, you're not expecting much more than 20 saves. You're hoping for 35 or 40 from anybody, but you're probably projecting and penciling in a much more reasonable number. The stuff plus numbers are off the charts. We've seen Treinen do this before. There's no reason to believe that Blake Treinen can't still pitch at a level that's comparable to what Liam Hendriks and Josh Hader do at the very top of the board. And I think that's what makes him pop for me as such a great value, is that he might even be a good enough reliever right now where you could still use him a bit in deeper mixed leagues, even if he's not the closer in Los Angeles.
And as advanced as Los Angeles has been, when they had Kenley Jansen, at least they were into the kind of sole closer role. They are an incredible bullpen by Stuff Plus. They would have, there's like 4 guys here on this list that would be better than like 20 other closers roles in baseball. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Daniel Hudson has a 114 Stuff Plus. Alex Vesia has a 110. Brusdar Gratterall has a 120. Phil Bickford has a 109. I mean, they're all of them better than any single reliever on the Royals. So I mean, it's interesting because they're obviously a team that has a very similar Stuff Plus to the one we have. They've made a lot of decisions that makes a lot of sense by Stuff Plus, and I like Treinen because I think he is in that list of we were talking about earlier, sort of the Chad Green-esque, where I do think that no matter what, he will return positive roto value next year. And even if they re-sign Jansen, I think that Treinen would get, something like he did last year, 7, maybe 10 saves, and just have lights out numbers. Like they added a whole new pitch. He has a really cool pitch called the sweeper. They changed his breaking ball last year to a seam shifted wake breaking ball called a sweeper. And, the Astros and the Yankees are one of the few teams that are really teaching this to a lot of their acquiring players that have certain aspects of their fastball that they think they can teach the sweeper to. It's really been, and on the Dodgers, it's been Julio Urias's new breaking ball is a sweeper. Mitch White throws a sweeper. I mean, they are all into that one. And I have more than a few shares of Treinen. Treinen is my favorite in this group, other than David Bednar, who, I think he just has the numbers. He's been given some save opportunities, and because he's on a bad team, people don't want to look his way. But because he's on a bad team, I really don't think there's anybody on that team that can push him for the role. I know they have Stratton listed as co-closer on roster resource, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, you go back and look at some of the Pirates teams of the not so distant past. I think of Jason Grilly as a Pirates closer of, well, it's been a little while since he was a closer, but I think about the grilled cheese video. Like they had like a grilled cheese being cooked in his closer hype video.
Like the House of Robles White Horse, and they just had a grilled cheese.
Like, I think they zoomed in on it and like the
with like the
cheese
bubbling
oozing
cheese.
out. Yeah. Like, how great is that? That is, someone should have been given a trophy for that video.
Oh
I
my God,
really
that's
believe
so
that.
good.
But in 2013, Jason Grilly, 33 saves for the Pirates. Like, that might have been a good year for the Pirates. I'm trying to remember when they were prominent for a little while. But anyway,
Yeah.
the point is, if you have sole possession of a closer role on a last place team, as long as it's your job, they're going to win enough games to get him 25 or 30 saves if he has the job all year. I think that's fair to say,
Yeah.
especially in that division, because that division is not a runaway division for anyone either.
And I think you just compare Scott Barlow to David Bednar, and you say David Bednar has higher stuff plus numbers, better, even some better like strikeout rate type stuff numbers, and then the other relievers in the Pirates pen are worse, but it's not like they're great in Kansas City, so they're both two bad teams. So I would say Bednar better stuff, fewer people pushing him for his role.
Yeah, that's really important to keep that
I'd have
in mind.
Bednar over Barlow. I might even have Treinen, ahead of some of the guys that we just saw. So
I'm Treinen over Bednar, but I think Treinen and Bednar stand out in this group to me. I actually think the guy that's going the latest of this group might be the next most interesting. I think Lucas Sims is good. I think it's a fair question to say, are the Reds a team that want one closer? I don't know if they necessarily do, but we have to at least open our minds to situations where two or three guys share the role, and the most often used member of a committee is still going to be better than some of the other alternatives that go in this range. So I would say I'm in on Lucas Sims. Joe Barlow is a bit of a mystery. I think that's a situation where I could see Kenley Jansen going and just being the guy. There's a handful of teams where it makes perfect sense, even a short-term deal, to just have an established ninth inning option. You sort out the rest of your relievers and try to figure out how to get to the ninth inning on a regular basis. They've been spending plenty of money. I'm curious to know what you make of Joe Barlow and if you prefer him to Scott Barlow, even though Scott goes a little bit earlier.
Well, I did until you brought up this Jansen to Texas thing, and then I just have one of those like feelings and like where the bottom falls out of your stomach, because I have a few shares of Joe Barlow because I thought, I don't think if with the remaining money they have left that they would spend it on the bullpen, but they could. You're right, and I hate you for it. Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought it was a bit of like a Bednar situation where it was like maybe not a great team. Best reliever on not a great team. Not too many guys that'll probably push him for it unless Jonathan Hernandez and Jose Leclerc come back, super awesome and super ready from being hurt. But I think even then they'd be sort of eased back in. I do think that maybe if you look at Barlow and Spores, he's the other guy with decent stuff numbers in there, and then you think of Hernandez and Leclerc, you might convince yourself, if you're the Rangers, that this could come together, or it could come together in 2023, which may be what you're thinking about anyway. And maybe you don't want to spend money on a declining closer. So I kind of think that they are more in the realm of possibilities for Carlos Rodon. I think if they go get Carlos Rodon, that the money may dry up at some point. So that's what I'm hoping. But I see Barlow as a Bednar light, I guess, or as it's like Bednar, maybe with that asterisk of maybe they spend and get another closer.
So we got some confirmation at the end of the season. I think one of the last times AJ Hinch spoke to the media at the end of the 2021 season, he said Gregory Soto is the closer going into 2022, which is nice to have that confirmation. How likely is he to keep the job throughout the season, though, based on the skills and stuff that we've seen to this point?
Yeah, he has poor command. He has the worst command numbers of the possibilities for the closer role there. Michael Fulmer, Jose Cisnero, maybe Kyle Funkhauser. Funkhauser doesn't have the stuff, though. So it's really Michael Fulmer that's going to push him. And if Soto loses it, it's probably not because he's left-handed, since they've already anointed him closer, but it's probably because he just walks the lineup too many times. And I'll have to admit, as much as I like Soto and as much as I, will probably have shares of him this year, that that is a possibility. It's poor command. It's just he could just walk 8 guys in a week and lose his role. Like it's just I have to admit that's in the realm of possibility. But where he's going, a lot of times I have him as my third closer. If you can pull that somehow, Soto and Barlow have been my third closers. For some reason, Bednar is getting hype in drafts, and I've wanted him for my third closer, and he's starting to go more like a second closer.
Yeah, I think this is actually a decent group to choose from because you can talk yourself into probably 2 or 3 different guys. By this point, I'd like to have 2 relievers rostered. If I get all the way through this group and I've only got 1, I'm gonna have to take a lot of shots and be
It
willing
does
to
get worse
turn.
even after this.
Yes, we have tier 4: Dylan Floro, Jake McGee, Lou Trevino, Matt Barnes, Andrew Kittredge, Ken Giles coming off Tommy John surgery, Rowan Wick. If you keep going further down, if we make this like pick 190-ish to 300 or so, you get Alex Reyes in there, you get
This
Paul
is
Sewald in
so
there.
painful. Can I tell you something? Pass.
On everyone?
Almost everyone, dude. Pass. I have a piece coming out about closers and like their setup men on these teams. I already said why I don't like McGee. Let me just give you now the list of closers that have sub 100 stuff plus. Rowan Wick, Kyle Finnegan, Will Smith, and Lou Trevino. I believe Lou Trevino has the worst stuff plus among any closer in baseball. Matt Barnes was on our list of with the enforcement. McGee was on the list of enforcement. I have a nice thing to say about the next guy. The other guy's coming back from Tommy John is in a crazy ass bullpen. We talked about Alex Reyes, and I have a nice thing to say about the last guy. So there's 2 guys I can say something nice on this list.
Ken Giles once punched himself in the face walking off the field. Therefore, I just can't. I can't
pass on it for that.
Just out. There's not. I mean, I think of things people could do on the field that would be like, oh, I just. I mean, you obviously there's other stuff that happens off the field. You're like, yeah, I'm just out. Like I'm not.
Well, who was that reliever that was celebrating? He was on the Marlins. He was celebrating. He did like a punch up in the air and he fell down.
I don't remember
Was
that.
it Plesac?
Really?
Anyway,
Yeah, we have
I
to
don't know.
dig
They
into
showed
that.
it. They showed it on MLB Network all the time, where he's trying to celebrate and he fell down.
Yeah, this is a really rough group. I don't see Trevino keeping the job. I think we talked about AJ Puck briefly on the show yesterday. I think he's worth a dart where he's going because it would make a lot of sense to just say, you're a closer. Let's get 60 great innings from you this year, and you're going to make a lot of money eventually. It's going to be somewhere else because we're going to trade you in 3 years. But try to be the next Josh Hader. I don't think that's a necessarily terrible ask of AJ Puck at this point. Kittredge,
He'll at least step into. I mean, that's also the way they've been using it. That's what we talked about in the last one. It's like, they haven't really stretched him out as much that recently. And then he could step right into the role that Diekman had last year, at the very least, where he's going to get some saves and just be their lefty.
Kittredge, I think, is pretty interesting.
There's the one. I like him.
It's a revolving door there. Like
It's so hard, yeah.
For whatever warm, fuzzy feeling you get paying up for job security early, you're never getting that with the way the Rays have handled things lately. I mean, you go back to the peak Fernando Rodney season and some things that have happened there over the course of like a decade that say, oh yeah, sometimes they go to one closer, but usually they don't. Kittredge has good skills. He doesn't have like the nasty 35% K rate that you want in an elite closer. But if you're taking a shot here, you want a partial share of a role, and you want a guy that's probably not going to hurt you on the way out the door, those are the boxes that I think Andrew Kittredge can tick that a lot of guys in this group don't. The Giles thing for me, it's not actually him punching himself in the face. It's that they have about 6 relievers that they can
It's the
close.
same, yeah. Tampa and Seattle. Like if you're looking to handcuff, like in a draft and hold, or like own a bullpen, stay away from Tampa and Seattle, because I love Paul Sewald and I like Ken Giles and I like Andrew Kittredge, but there's no way to feel like you have a handle on these bullpens. Like there's just no way. I think that they're just excellent bullpens that could just share it around, and I think that's going to be really difficult. The only exception I have to that, though, is mono leagues. Because in a mono league, let's say you've got your big horse closer for $15, $19, right? That's $19. That's where the best closers go. You got one. Well, to win a mono league, you normally have to have two closers. So then you take your shot at a $5 closer, right? Or $6, like somebody that you think might close. If you can get Pete Fairbanks, JP Fireeisen, JT Chargeois, I guess you wouldn't get Ken Giles, but if you could get Diego Castillo,
Castillo's going to be a little bit cheap, probably $3-4 probably.
Diego Castillo,
Andres
Munoz.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get those guys for like $2-3, I think it's worth going for $1 more to get one of those guys, because I think they'll factor in, and I think they'll be good, and that you can drop them if they're not. But it's not a huge investment, but you might get 10 saves and really good numbers for cheap, and those are still saves. So I don't like paying top dollar in these bullpens as much as Seawald is amazing. It's a really good bullpen. He's got a bit of a funky release. I'm a little bit worried that Stuff Plus overvalues funky releases, but that's still to be studied. But just generally, both of those bullpens are tough because of how good they are up and down, and how they've shown in the past that they're just willing to sort of, spread the love.
If I were in a mono league or it's a draft and hold situation, Seawald is the guy that I actually like the most all around. If you said you got to take one shot in Seattle, it's still Seawald. I mean, great results last year, plenty of Ks, kind of fits the bill as a staff filler that a lot of other relievers don't necessarily fit. I think with Giles, we're still waiting for him to come all the way back from injury, so he's a little bit of an early season risk in that regard.
It's worth pointing out that Kittredge and Seawald do have the best Stuff Plus in both of their pens, but that people throw harder in their pens than they do, both of them, and it's more for Seawald. But
so we're gonna try
darts time.
Yeah, we're gonna throw some darts. We could do this like we didn't start the fire style, not actually like singing the words in that sort of way, but more just like looking.
Less singing for me,
yes, less singing is probably one of the things that people ask for the most when they leave reviews in this podcast. But we can see, the thing is, if you want Eno to sing, we can set up a SoundCloud where Eno sings about whatever you want. You can sing covers, you can do karaoke. We can do all that on a separate feed. That way people who want that can have that, but the people that don't aren't subjected to it. That seems like the best of all worlds. So I'm going to run through team by team, A to Z. There's not a Z team yet. That's baseball of the future on the 3-0 show. We should have a Z team 30 years from now. I don't know what we're going to call them. I don't know where they're going to play, but we should have a Z team.
The Zealots.
So just the A to Z approach to the bullpens. If you didn't
can't
listen
be
to
zebras, that's the umpires.
You can't. No. If you tuned out for the last hour and you're still listening, thank you for just leaving the podcast on.
Wake up.
Fantastic for the metrics. Team by team, rapid fire. We're just going to look through Angels, Raisel, Iglesias, safe. Like him at the price.
Mm-hmm.
Astros, Ryan Presley, good at the price. We like him. Early guy that you want to get. A's, Lou Trevino, no, just don't do it. AJ Puck's the clear dart. If you're taking a shot in Oakland, it's AJ Puck, right? Okay. Blue Jays, Jordan Romano, pretty safe for now. I'm going to say his name before Eno does.
Oh no! I want to say. Oh, duh.
I've never said his name on the podcast before because you always say it first.
Yeah, he just needs to stay healthy.
AL only reserves and maybe like your last pick in a draft and hold if you're trying to.
My last two picks.
Last dart.
And my last two picks in my last draft and hold were Griffin Jackson, Julian Wayweather.
All right. Atlanta, Will Smith, we were both kind of out on at the price. If you're throwing a dart there, is it Jackson? Is it Matzik? Is it Minter? Who's your next up there?
Going Minter.
You're going Minter. I think I would actually go Matzik, but I also will say, even though there's plenty of skills there, this is more of the crowd that I would say I'm throwing my dart into a smaller crowd in hopes of being more likely right by some other situation.
I kind of feel like someone will be mostly the closer there. It doesn't strike me. There is a little bit of a whiff of Seattle and Tampa, but not quite.
Brewers, Josh Hader, safe. Just a question of how much it's going to cost you to
trade it. I think it's Williams. I think Cousins is in like 3 years as a closer.
Yeah. Williams is the easy next in line. Format dependent whether or not you're actually trying to stash him though while you wait for that. Skills are pretty close to good enough, though, to just use him as a staff filler in certain deep mixed leagues. Cardinals, Gallegos is the guy for now. Who's your fallback option there? You're on Hicks making the full comeback.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's silly that they're trying to stretch him out as a starter. That's just absurd. What are you thinking? You said Rowan Wick had bad stuff for the Cubs. He sounds like a guy that would throw hard and also have a closer video that has a candle.
I feel
actually, no, it'd be a long wick on some
this,
dynamite or something.
What is that song, The Candle in the Wind?
That'd be horrible entrance music.
That would be no, it'd be really funny because it'd be so bad. It would be like was it that Josh Reddick did? Careless Whisper.
Careless Whisper has been
Candle
done.
in the Wind. It'd be so weird in the ninth inning. It was great.
You wouldn't even jog out from the pen. You'd walk in.
You'd be like blowing kisses
very slowly. That'd be weird. Like
so weird.
So which Cubs reliever do you like, if any?
I feel like they are looking at a different stuff plus number than I am because all of their relievers are below 100 stuff plus, and they're the only bullpen that has that. So I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when I look at this, and I have no idea. The first person I ever read a piece about stuff was Jeremy Greenhouse, who works for the Cubs. So maybe he's just galaxy branding something that I don't have in my numbers. But I don't like any of them. But if I had to pick one, it'd be Emmanuel Rodriguez.
Yeah, if he's healthy, he's really interesting. I'm going to say if I had to throw another dart, and this is another pen that I'm not doing that, it's Cody Hoyer, right? Is it the German pronunciation? The correct pronunciation?
Yeah. One of the times I can get it right.
Mark Melancon looks pretty safe for the Diamondbacks. I actually thought JB Bukauskas was going to emerge for that role and make them not want to sign a closer. I was wrong about that. Not even close. You said Noe
Ramirez has the second best stuff. I don't know.
I don't think I'm stashing anyone from that pen in most situations right now. We both like Blake Treinen a bit. If they went with someone else as their primary source of saves from the people they have, is it Daniel Hudson? Because of
Stuff Plus says Gratterall, but I don't see the usage saying that, so I think it would be Hudson.
Yeah, I think he'd be the stash if you want to take a stash there. If we're not certain about Doval's hold on the role in San Francisco, is there a Giants reliever that you do like as a late value?
Tyler Rogers, but
yeah, he's
I can't believe Tyler Rogers is going so much further. Like Tyler Rogers, 120 stuff plus, Camilo Doval, 104. I don't know.
If we want saves, don't we want Tyler Rogers instead of Taylor Rogers based on how things have been working out?
In fact, the over-under on that is very interesting. We could do a prop bet on this. Tyler or Taylor for saves next year.
Yeah, I want to see Taylor Rogers get 25 plus saves, but it just doesn't quite play out that way. Guardians, Emmanuel Clase looks really stable. The Karinchak collapse, I'm not throwing a dart there. I'm actually kind of curious to see if Anthony Ghost can make it to a high leverage role. That'd be a nice story if that happens, but I'm not really speculating.
Clase doesn't really have that crazy of platoon split since his fastball had so much cut. So I don't think they would even go to like a lefty righty situation there. But Ghost could end up being the eighth inning guy. So if you're in saves and holes, that's kind of interesting.
Mariners situation, very crowded. Seawald was my preferred dart since that's not really a situation where you have a clear-cut guy. Could be a mess all year because they are loaded.
Munoz is super, super exciting. If you're in a dynasty league and you can afford to not get saves in their first year, pick up Munoz this year.
Yeah. Marlins, Dylan Floro. Didn't really mention him. He was going up in that tier 4 cluster of pitchers to avoid. So if we're avoiding Dylan Floro, is there a Marlins reliever that we're drafting? Or are we thinking that maybe someone that gets bumped from the rotation ends up in that
Please
spot?
Get the draft kit anyway, but I explained why Anthony Bender is a better bet than Dylan Floro. So
still something that could change there if they scoop someone else up, though. It doesn't look like they necessarily have their primary source of saves already locked in.
I guess you could get Jansen there. They're willing to spend, and they would make that bullpen a lot better. Yeah, it would. You don't want to be giving Anthony Bass the ball a lot.
That was a Paul Sporer suggestion in a draft and hold chat I was in recently, and I was like, "Yep, that works too." It's Texas or Miami for me if Jansen's leaving LA. Edwin Díaz, we talked about some of the warts. Probably the guy throughout the season, but if he's not, is it Lugo? Is it Trevor May? Is it someone else?
Trevor May.
very affordable in these early drafts as well. Oh man, the Nats. There's a bullpen. We didn't even have a name come up in the earlier part of the show.
Finnegan was one of the sub 100 stuff plus guys. So I actually think this is rife for some fun stuff here. Tanner Rainey, 109 stuff plus. Kyle Finnegan, 97. Give me Tanner Rainey 10 rounds later.
Yeah, Rainey, I think, makes some sense. They can't ever seem to get Austin Voth right, even though other teams might be able to fix him. So I'd be curious to see what happens if they gave him that shot in the ninth inning. They should just let him start. He's better than some of their back-end starters. Not that I'm mad about it. The Orioles, another team that didn't have someone pop earlier in the show. Tyler Wells is the guy that I like there. I know Cole Sulser has got some saves. Tanner Scott throws really hard from the left side, but Tyler Wells has a pretty good track record in the minors. The season ended with some shoulder inflammation, but he was coming off of a 2-year layoff of being able to pitch in games. So
is he going as the closer?
I think he's got the earliest ADP of the bunch. Wells is
He's
going around
listed
pick
as
344.
He's listed on Fangraphs as the closer. Stuff plus like Tanner Scott the best, 115, but Tyler Wells 109 is pretty good. The changes in the outfield there might make the reliever more rosterable there. And I think you might still get 20 saves out of this closer. I like Wells. I like Scott also as a late dart.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, you look at the numbers he's posted over the course of his career. He broke through in 2017. Really, 18, 19, and 21 are the 3 seasons that he's had that weren't cut short by, pandemic stuff or just being late to the party. ERA is near 5, bad whips. If you watch him, it doesn't make sense, but Wells definitely some better level to level results. So I'm going Wells like the market is in this case if I'm trying to get something out of that Orioles bullpen. Padres, another one where you can kind of choose your own adventure, and kind of surprising, no one popped earlier in the show here. It looks like a spot where there's a lot of uncertainty. They brought Robert Suarez in after a successful stint in Japan. They still have Emilio Pagan. Pierce Johnson is emerging to be a more prominent option there. Luis Garcia from the Cardinals is kind of interesting. He's been the guy that I've been drafting so far, and it is a late dart where if it doesn't work out, there's absolutely no downside.
Yeah, I've got I think I've got 3 drafting holes and 3 Luis Garcias. So I think he could be it. But Pierce Johnson does have the best stuff plus in this pen, 114. They brought him over from Japan, similar to Robert Suarez. However, a key difference here, Robert Suarez has had less than a strikeout per inning in Japan for the last 2 years. It's just a weird idea for me that he would have less than a strikeout per inning in Japan, come over here and be a closer. So I have a feeling he's not the closer. So, Pierce Johnson, Luis Garcia, I'm interested in those guys. Pagan, 111 stuff plus right there with Luis Garcia. It could be him, but I feel also like they've tried it. They've had the chance to give it to him. It's like, I like Drew Pomeranz, but they tried it. They've had the chance to give it to him. They really haven't. So I think it's Garcia or Johnson. It's a little bit up in the air, and it's not worth a heavy investment, I don't think.
I think Suarez is the new Pierce Johnson. Like they brought him back a couple years ago, and it was more low leverage stuff at first. But I think I'm Garcia first, Johnson second, Pagan third. If I'm taking shots there right now, if Pomeranz is healthy, I think he easily jumps in at least to that third position, if not a little bit higher, despite the frustrations in the past. If Corey Knebel doesn't get the job done in Philly and they don't add Kimbrel via trade or someone else to be their clear-cut closer, who in that pen do you like as a fallback option?
Sam Coonrod.
So you're taking him over Sir Anthony Dominguez and Jose Alvarado. Yeah, why'd you say Jose it like your Oprah?
I don't know. Come on down. Jose Alvarado has a 93 stuff plus. I'm really surprised by that, but he also has no command, so no thanks. Sam Coonrod supposedly has no command, but had a 102.8 location plus last year. He also throws wicked hard. So I'm going to go with the hard thrower from the right side. Leave Alvarado as a situational lefty, basically. And it's Coonrod or Knebel for me, unless somebody comes in.
Yeah, I like Knebel enough where I'm pretty firmly just taking my chances with him and not messing much with the backup options here, even in really deep leagues. Pirates behind David Bednar. I think we hinted at this one yesterday too. I think Mitch Keller is low-key like the biggest threat
and not
David
listed on
Bednar.
a depth chart. So that's a very interesting idea because he would, if he's throwing 100, but needs to throw 100 to keep everybody off that fastball. He also has really bad command. I mean, he seems like a future reliever to me. Banda, Stratton, Underwood are basically average or less than average as stuff plus. So if it's not Bednar, it's Keller. I'm with you on that.
Rangers, Joe Barlow. It seems like he's kind of your guy right now. And if you look at the alternatives, Spores.
I like Spores as a dark horse.
Have not drafted him anywhere yet. I'll have to file him away for AL only purposes.
If we come back and like Hernandez and Leclerc are blowing 99 and in camp, I don't know. I just haven't heard any news on them. I don't really know their timelines.
Yeah, no short-term optimism for me with them, but hopefully they can get back and get healthy again. We talked about Kittredge and Fairbanks and Fire Eyes in a little bit in passing. Is that the hierarchy for you with the Rays right now?
Yeah, Fire Eyes had a little bit of a issue after the sticky stuff enforcement, so that makes me a little bit worried. I like Fairbanks there.
Matt Barnes, I think you said you did like, but he was among the fallers as well. Garrett Whitlock, we didn't talk about him. I mean, his role is still TBD. They could stretch him out as a starter, but is he just...
I think he could be an okay starter because he has a few pitches. However, that bullpen really needs him. Behind Whitlock and Barnes, it's Brazier, Taylor, and Hiroka Sawamura, who has really, really bad command, like really bad, like among the worst we've talked about today. I think maybe the worst. So I don't think you can trust him in the very end of the game. You kind of put him in the middle, I think. Brazier is all right, but he's not great. And Taylor's a lefty that's decent, but I don't think he has necessarily closer stuff. So I think they need to keep Whitlock back there. Maybe he's the closer to begin the year. That's how Fangraphs has it. I kind of think it's Matt Barnes. Maybe they're just going to throw them both out there in spring and decide in spring.
Yeah, Whitlock would go in that tier 4 group by ADP with Floro and Jake McGee and Trevino and a lot of guys we don't like. I actually do like Whitlock from a skills perspective.
I like him better than a lot of those other names we talked about in that tier.
Yeah, but I have not been drafting him to this point in draft season. With the Reds, Lucas Sims, maybe atop the list right now. Is there anyone else that you like, though, if Sims gets hurt or it doesn't work out?
Stuff plus is Art Warren. Amir Garrett has decent stuff plus, but the command, I think, is the reason why he has all those blow-ups. And he has a lot of blow-ups. And I think he's had the chance to kind of be the closer and hasn't kind of really taken it by the horns. So I think Art Warren is it's hard to recommend him. Like even a 15-team late, maybe 15-team late, because Lucas Sims is not necessarily assured of the role. So
Colorado, we've got Carlos Estevez atop the depth chart. Daniel Bard is still there. Robert Stevenson might be the best option of the bunch if they let him have a shot at it.
Yes, Stevenson actually has the best stuff plus in that pen, and Bard throws harder than the closer. So Steven, I think that's a more unsettled. I've seen, Estevez does fall because it's Colorado, but I think he could fall even further. I would say that's pretty unsettled, or will be shortly.
We got the Royals a little bit earlier. If you're not into Scott Barlow, Dylan Coleman is the guy that I actually like the most. Throws hard, has had a pretty good track record throughout his time in the minors. Doesn't really have anything left to prove there. Should break camp. I think the only problem with a guy like Coleman is that it may take a month before they give him chances to close. Like they have so many other guys they mix and match late that he has to sort of prove himself in lower leverage spots before they would actually put him in that situation.
The way I like Coleman is this. I think that what you need to do is remember Dylan Coleman's name. And let's say you picked Luis Garcia in San Diego in a league where you can drop plays, and Luis Garcia is not the closer, and you're looking to drop Luis Garcia. You should leave that position, that spot on your bench as a closer speculation spot. And what you should do is go get someone like Dylan Coleman before they even pitch the 8th or before the 9th inning guy starts losing his job, right? And just sort of speculate, because what you can do then is save free agency auction money by spending $2 on Dylan Coleman in week 2. And then maybe in week 5 or 6, he's the closer. And you paid $2 for him instead of paying $30 for him the week he becomes closer.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about Coleman in the short term with that longer runway for him to possibly get that opportunity. Gregory Soto, the guy in Detroit right now, if he breaks down, is Michael Fulmer a viable fallback option again?
That's really all I got.
Yeah. The twin situation I mentioned earlier on the show, Taylor Rogers only had 9 saves last year. Hansel Robles had a bunch last year, along with Alex Colomé. They're both gone.
Allow me one where I don't name the name. Just allow me one, okay? It's a teaser. The draft kit drops Monday. There's a pitcher on this team that has a better stuff plus than Taylor Rogers. I wrote about him for Monday.
I'll drop a hint. There are 2 righties in that bullpen that I like as darts because they're very cheap. Wrote about one of them. So you have that to look forward to. White Sox, Liam Hendriks, clearly the guy. If he gets hurt, if Kimbrel gets traded and Hendriks gets hurt, they could go at least 3 different directions. You could make an argument for Graveman, Bummer, or Crochet. And because Bummer and Crochet are both lefties, I think you could use a lefty as a closer. I think it's one of those situations where
I think it might be Bummer.
Those guys are rosterable in AL only leagues.
Although Bummer is maybe your closer.
Well, yeah, you could do worse, but
yeah, like Josh lost the game.
Is that a real player? High A guy lost the game. Yankees, Aroldis Chapman. I think I have a few more concerns than you do.
Aaron blew it.
Yes.
What team were you on?
Yankees. Last one. If something happens to Aroldis Chapman, who's
I
the actual
love
closer?
Chad Green. I've rostered Chad Green without him being, giving me any saves. I think it would be Chad Green, but Loizaga, as he stays healthy, and then people just don't understand how good Clay Holmes is. He had a 115 stuff plus. Like he actually has the third best stuff plus in that pen. In fact, Chad Green had better stuff plus last year than Aroldis Chapman. That's a new thing that has just happened. So anyway, they believe in stuff plus. Guess what? They average for about a 120 stuff plus among their top 4 relievers. So
that's pretty good. Chad Green's not cheap though. You're throwing a dart at like pick 350 on him, but I think
if it's a dart situation, maybe Loizaga then.
Yeah, I don't think there's as much interest in him because it seems like he's further away from those saves. Actually, 54 is his ADP. What are we doing with this Yankees bullpen? He's not going to start. Weird. Very weird.
Yankee, the Yankee brand.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, hopefully that helped a lot of people along the way. We covered a lot of ground on this episode, a very long episode.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, if you're the commissioner of a league, you should strongly think about tweaking the way you handle relievers in your league. Hopefully, saves plus holds is at least a step in the right direction until we get some better stats that we can use. The pitcher fortnight is over, but we can still.
Mugatu.
Oh, you said you felt like you were taking crazy pills earlier, which is exactly what Mugatu and Zoolander says.
Oh, okay.
Magnum, Blue Steel, it's the same face. It's so I changed that while there was a.
At least you didn't put it to Blue the game.
Eno lost the game. Yeah. So pitcher questions always encouraged, along with any other questions and emails. I was gone for about a week, so I didn't really read any emails for the last week. I'm going to catch up on them on Friday. That's my Friday activity. I catch up on emails. You can send us a question, ratesandbarrels@theathletic.com. You can ask a question under the comments part of the video on YouTube. We'll be sure to check those as well. And we've got a special deal right now. If you don't have a subscription to The Athletic, you can get one for $1 a month for the first 6 months at theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels, because the draft kit drops on Monday. So there's going to be a lot of content rolling out then. And it's a great way, of course, to support the work that we do here on Twitter. I'm at Derek Van Riper. He is at Eno Saris. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.